Join Doctors Savanah Craig and Ronnetta Sartor as we navigate life beyond graduation. Real conversations about forging our own paths in our early years in our careers. There's a reason it's called practicing dentist. All right, welcome back to another episode of Beyond Graduation. I am Savanah Craig.
And I am Ronnetta Sartor, and we're so happy to be back.
This week, we are talking about financial controls. So here in the Ignite DDS world, we talk about our self-determined future and, how we can take control over putting our life, on the path that we want. So we look at a bunch of different areas of control that we have in our life, and finances are a big part of that. So shout out to Dr. David Rice for the topic idea this week.
I'm interested to hear your perspective on it because you graduated around the time of COVID and all that stuff, right?
Yeah, so I'm 2 years out, 2022.
And so the economy is a bit different once you got out of school and graduated compared to when I did. Things were a bit different, so I think it'll be interesting to hear your perspective, especially because you are 2 years out. And I'm feeling old, but at this point I'm 7 years out, so go for it.
Yeah. So I think, I feel like I ramped up to it because I went into residency and, we were making good money when you went from dental school where you were losing money constantly. And then, obviously now as an associate, getting real paychecks is awesome. So I think the biggest thing for me was finding balance between, making your lifestyle a little bit nicer. You don't have to live like a student and have roommates and all of that. Well, I have Adam, but different. Versus trying to still, you can't come out of dental school, in my opinion, and go buy, a brand new car, all these things. Just trying to allow yourself some freedom to have a nicer life because you worked really hard for this career, but also being realistic and trying to save for other goals. If you want to buy a practice, if you want to buy a house, and there are ways to make all of that work. So we lived in a nicer apartment in residency than I did in dental school, but it wasn't astronomical. It helps that I have a partner with a full-time job too. So that's a specific privilege that I have in those moments where I could save more of my residency salary and those sorts of things. But just living within your means has been ingrained in me from family and friends and mentors. So that's helped over these last 2 years. But we're still taking vacations and impulse buying massage chairs off of Facebook Marketplace.
But you got it for a really good deal, though.
Right? See, balance.
Balance. There you go. So you didn't go out and get like a brand new one. You found one that was within your means.
Exactly.
I guess I would say, from my perspective, one of the best things that probably could have happened to me was in dental school. We had like some finance people come in and like talk to our class for lunch and learn. But after, one of the guys, he followed up with me. And, you're in dental school, like you say, we're going in the negative, as the hours speak, like as the hours go by. And so I'm like, okay, like I'll meet with you, but like I have nothing to give. Like there's nothing here. Like I'm eating ramen most
Correct.
nights, or just eggs, trying to figure it out. But it was one of the best things that could have happened because it gave me perspective. And then when I was in residency, he followed back up with me, and we talked about, okay, these are your goals of what you want. So we talked about that I'm the eldest of my sibling and I, and at some point I may need to help take care of our mom. We
Mhm.
talked about at some point I wanted to get married and have children and have a practice and all these things, which was fundamental to me figuring out what I needed to do for finances. So one of the first things, and I'm sure they talk about it in dental school all the time, and the ADA, thank God for the ADA giving us the free disability insurance policy.
Mhm.
But I would say just about everyone that you talk to will say that that's the first piece of the pie, because you have to
Yes.
protect your assets, and your assets are pretty much your hands and your eyes, um, and your body as well, kind of the whole shebang. It
As much
all
of it as you can protect.
right, it all has to be working. And so that was the first step for me in residency, and it was cheaper in residency because you got student rates to get the disability
Mhm.
insurance. But from there, just, okay, well, I need to save X amount per paycheck to get to this amount. And then once you get in the habit of doing that, okay, well, now I have a little cushion in an emergency fund. So now I can start investing, but even learning, okay, this is how you invest and that sort of thing. So I think a very important part for me early on, especially because I'm a first generation, like, college student, like first generation kind of everything.
Yeah.
Um, I didn't have like someone to tell me this is how you should do money. This is how you should make
Mhm.
your money like work for you and that sort of thing. So it was very important to have someone that, at the time, thank God, like he didn't really care that I had $0 in it was more so he was passionate about educating people on what to do with your finances. So
Yeah. I think you bring up such a good point of finding an expert who we know teeth, we don't know finances. Finding somebody you trust to help guide you is really important. Also, starting early. It's really hard to go back. I I think it would have been really challenging to not have had those habits of saving, investing when you didn't have a lot, and then trying to, once you had an associate paycheck, now decide I have to save and invest. So I think if you can start those habits early and just let everything sort of in the same ratio grow as your income grows, is a lot easier than not having any of that, like, structure or system in your life for saving and looking towards the future and future goals.
I agree. What did they tell you anything in dental school at all about, this is what you should do with your finances if you want to be a practice owner? Or
For some reason, in the back of my mind, it's always been like $50,000 that you have to have in a bank account to prove to the bank that you can get a practice loan. I don't know if that's true.
I've heard a variation of that. I've
Okay.
heard much lower, and I've heard higher as well. So I think my game plan was, okay, I know within X amount of time I want to be a practice owner. So
Right.
I really have to live below my means and save everything that I can to be able to prove to them, okay, I've got this saved. I'm ready. Um,
One of the myths or pieces of information that I've learned relatively recently probably since I graduated dental school is the whole idea that banks don't necessarily look at your debt to income ratio because I don't know, just where I came from, it was pay off the debt as fast as possible, all of those things. But the bank's really looking at your monthly student loan payment or car payment or whatever. So compared to your income. So even if it takes you longer to pay off your debt, if you have a smaller monthly, right, it almost makes it look better to get your practice loan or your mortgage or whatever.
And so I pretty much was told the same thing, you know,
Okay.
get the plan that would allow you to have the lowest
Mm-hmm.
student loan payment. Now, if you want to pay extra so that you take over the interest, that's fine, but banks care about what the payment shows so that they know, okay, well, they'll have the money to pay the loan back.
Right. They want their piece of the pie as well. Fair enough.
Right. Because, like, you know, besides who you marry and buying a home and that sort of thing, it's probably one of the most important but also expensive decisions that you'll make.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So how you've been doing this for longer than I have. How has things changed? If one, if you could go back, would you change anything? Pretend you're talking to yourself 5 years in the past. What would your advice be? And how have things changed from first out resident to associate, now as a practice owner? I'm sure the financial systems you have are super different now.
Hmm. So it's a lot more plate spinning now for sure. But from a perspective of, I think your first question was, would I change anything? I think, because in school we always heard, if you want to, gosh, I'm losing my voice. Hold on.
Bright and early podcasting here, everybody.
I know. If you want to be a practice owner, buy the practice before you get the house. Um, I don't know if I would change it. I think it really depends on what the economy is doing and what the interest rates were.
Sure.
Um, at the time when I purchased my house, I did not have a practice yet, but interest rates were in the 2% range. So I said, why not? You
Yeah.
know, it's just going to go up anyway. And, you know, I purchased the practice maybe less than a year later. And by then it had gone up at least 2% in
Is the
between that time.
reason is the reason for that advice just back to that monthly like debt payment? Why did they tell you get the practice first?
You know, that's a good question. I maybe should have asked for more clarity, but
But I've
to
heard I've heard that from so many
yeah,
people and I didn't know.
yeah, I guess to your point, um, because I mean, they factor in if you're renting, they'll factor that in too.
So
I
yeah,
think a
I
lot of it depends
wonder.
on where you live, right? So
Sure.
I'm in South Carolina, so what I was paying for an apartment, I could have had a house and paid less than.
Mhm.
And so for me, it made sense. But if you're in, you know, a big city, it
Mhm.
may not. It may be that you can rent for cheaper.
Yeah.
And as long as that number is smaller, I would think that it's more appealing to the bank,
Okay.
because you have less that needs to go out and you'd be able to make that payment to them.
Right. It's just all about money in, money out.
So I think
Okay.
that's one of the things that, from that perspective, I can see it. A lot of it is where do you live? Where do you want to
Sure.
live, as Dr. Rice would say? And then just knowing what things cost, running the
Mhm.
numbers to see, you know, I when I bought my house, it was my lease was about to renew on my apartment, and I knew what the price was going up to. So I had
Right.
I had an idea of, okay, well, if I could get a mortgage that's within that range, then I'm doing something, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And so I won't say that I would change that because it ended up working out, but I think it is something that, you know, we all want when we leave school. Okay, I want to be homeowner, practice owner, but I think a lot of it depends on where you live and how much things cost. And to your point that we spoke about earlier, what the economy is doing, like now the interest rate's 3 times what it was when I bought my house. So that number is going to be larger than what it was before.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you asked as well about how it looked as a resident versus an associate versus now a practice owner. So as an associate and as a resident, like I said, I was just throwing as much money away as I could just to save it, invest it, and see it grow as quickly as it could because I knew that at some point I wanted to be a practice owner and I wanted to be able to make that dream a reality.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think now is different because I have to have a bigger team when it comes to managing those things. So my CPA is more involved. I
Yeah.
talked to the same guy that I met while in dental school about financial stuff and investing and all that kind of stuff. But now it's making sure that home as well as the practice are on the right path
Mm-hmm.
and making sure that I'm not overspending in the practice because the practice has its own bills, but also making sure that at home I'm doing what I need to do for um you never know, what if we have another um COVID-19 scare or some other
Yeah.
catastrophe or
Yeah.
pandemic break out. You want to make sure that not only can I sustain myself at home, but I'm also now responsible for my team has 6 other people. I'm
Yeah.
responsible for the financial lives of 6 other families.
Yeah.
And so now it's making sure that, okay, it's not only about me now. Every decision I make from a business standpoint can impact these people who are my team. And I want to make sure that they are happy and healthy and their families can sustain as well.
What a crazy. I would love to talk to a financial planner about how COVID changed the whole landscape. That was not something any of us thought could ever happen.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to consider your practice closing for several months or something absolutely bizarre and out of your control. But I with finances in general, sort of planning for the worst, hoping for the best, and having your systems in place because you can't. We call it financial control, but there's really no control.
I think it's like you said, right? The first thing is, staying within your means, right?
Mm-hmm.
That might mean having a budget and knowing all of those things. I think the next most important thing is your team, but also who you do life with
Oh,
and
yeah.
making sure that you're on the same page with whoever your partner might be to make sure that, okay, this is our goal and keeping your eye on the prize, especially as a young dentist.
Yeah. It's just another area of delayed gratification. And that skill, it's so hard because I understand the people who come out of dental school and you have just been so burnt out for 4 years that you want to ball out, and not saying that you can't go on a nice trip or do something to reward yourself for the hard work you've put in, but you also have to use those skills that you learned of delayed gratification to prepare your future life too.
Mm-hmm. I would even say, to your point, like once you're in an associateship or once you're practice owner, the same rings true because it's like, man, we work really hard. Dentistry is hard. It's hard on
Yes.
your body, it's hard on your mind and everything. So you want to have some sort of reward. So, like you said, it's, keeping it in check. Okay, this is what I can do. Like we said, that's within my means. And, the world's not going to stop if I do it. We'll still have something to fall back on.
Yeah. Yeah. Just being as realistic as you can. And I think also comparison, trying not to, but that's a topic for another day, comparison.
It's a huge topic. But that's easier said than done. But once you know what your lane is and you're able to, go for that lane and what your purpose is, I think it helps a whole lot to cancel out the noise of comparison.
Staying true to yourself and your own goals in life.
Well, I think that's going to wrap up our episode on financial controls. Let us know what financial controls you all have in place and any that we may have missed that you think is really important. Please let us know. You can reach me on Instagram at Dr_Sartor, and you can reach Savanah at
Savanah Craig DDS.
And we look forward to seeing you guys next time. And that's it for now. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Beyond Graduation. If you enjoyed this week's episode, be sure to share it with a friend. Connect with us on social media, Savanah Craig, BDS, and Dr_Sartor. And remember, you are not alone on this journey.
This episode was sponsored by the Dental Residency Guide and the Beyond Graduation ebooks. These ebooks can be found at ignitedds.com/ebooks.
Thank you so much for listening to Beyond Graduation, brought to you by Ignite DDS and Future Dentists.